A police dog prevented a pilot from boarding his aircraft, resulting in delays and passenger frustration. However, when security personnel investigated under the cockpit seat, the discovery caused everyone to evacuate. Here's the story. Before we proceed, please share your location in the comments. If you enjoy unusual police dog stories like this one, remember to subscribe for future content. A stark light from the fluorescent fixtures illuminated Terminal 3 of O'Hare International Airport as Officer Michael Reeves straightened his winter patrol jacket, his exhale seen in the January cold filtering through the automatic doors. Adjacent to him, Titan, his German Shepherd partner for 3 years, kept a precise heel position, his dark eyes observing the continuous flow of travelers with seasoned focus. The morning rush was underway, with passengers hurrying to their gates through the snowstorm that had blanketed Chicago overnight. Weather delays had created a tense atmosphere, with anxious travelers checking departure boards and flight crews rushing to minimize further disruptions. Just another day in paradise. Huh, boy? Reeves murmured, reaching down to scratch behind Titan's ear. The shepherd leaned into his touch briefly before resuming his vigilant posture. Reeves smiled, recalling that his colleagues had given Titan the nickname the Professor because of his almost unsettling ability to analyze situations. The dog never barked without cause, a trait that had made them one of the airport's most respected security teams. They continued their sweep through the international terminal, Titan moving with fluid grace between bags and passengers. Occasionally, he would look toward Reeves, their long history of working together clear in the understated exchanges between them. They had recently gone by the exclusive airline lounges when Titan's demeanor changed sharply, a transformation so abrupt that Reeves immediately perceived it. The shepherd's ears rose, his body tightening as his attention settled on a pilot walking assuredly through the crew's security lane. Captain James Harrington, as indicated on his visible ID badge, proceeded toward the flight deck preparation area. A flight bag was slung over one shoulder. He appeared unremarkable. His uniform was spotless, and his demeanor professional, as he nodded to the security personnel. However, Titan shifted from routine patrol to heightened alertness. A low growl emanated from his throat, quickly intensifying to insistent barking as he pulled Reeves toward the pilot. "Titan, hail!" Reeves gave the command, but for the first time in their partnership, Titan disregarded the order. The shepherd moved forward, placing himself directly in the pilot's path, his barking now attracting startled glances from everyone nearby. When Captain Harrington tried to step around him, Titan mirrored his movements, physically preventing him from going any further. "Control your dog, officer," Harrington snapped, his face reddening as passengers began to stare. "I have a transatlantic flight departing in 40 minutes. I apologize for the inconvenience, Captain," Reeves said, keeping his voice measured while maintaining his grip on Titan's leash. "But my partner doesn't react this way without a reason." Harrington's jaw tightened. "Well, your partner is mistaken. I've been flying for American Airlines for 15 years. I don't have time for this." Airport Security Supervisor Diane Coleman stepped forward, her expression carefully neutral, given the unfolding situation in the bustling terminal. "What's the situation, Reeves?" she inquired softly. "Titan's alerting strongly to the captain here," Reeves responded, observing that Titan's focus remained consistently on Harrington. "I've never seen him react this intensely to airline personnel." "This is ridiculous," Harrington stated, glancing at his watch. "Flight 862 to London was already delayed because of the snowstorm. I have 243 passengers waiting to board." Coleman glanced between the barking shepherd and the increasingly agitated pilot. "Officer Reeves, you know we can't delay a flight because your dog is having an episode." Reeves felt the weight of the decision pressing on him. 3 years of working with Titan had taught him to trust the dog's instincts implicitly. Titan's assessments had proven accurate previously, including the discovery of a concealed weapon last year and the identification of a drug smuggler with surgical implants 2 months ago. "I'm requesting a secondary screening for Captain Harrington," Reeves stated firmly. "Protocol allows for random additional security checks of all personnel, including flight crew." "This isn't random," Harrington snapped, his face growing redder. "It's harassment. I'm calling the Airline Operations Center." While the pilot reached for his phone, Reeves observed a detail that reinforced his determination. A subtle tremor in Harrington's hand, a tension around his eyes that was absent just moments prior, suggested fear, or perhaps annoyance at the delay. Regardless, it wasn't the usual response from airline employees who sometimes experienced random screening. "Sir, please accompany us for a brief additional check," Coleman stated, having made her decision. "We are working to speed up the procedure to reduce any impact on your flight." "This is unacceptable," Harrington exclaimed, but Reeves observed the pilot's gaze shifting towards the closest exit. "Captain, this situation can be resolved discreetly, or we can formally report it," Coleman cautioned. "The decision is yours." Harrington's shoulders dropped a little. "Very well, but the airline will be informed of this." As they guided the pilot towards the private screening room, Reeves lowered himself to speak with Titan, who had become a bit calmer but remained watchful. He whispered, "Good boy. I trust you." Reeves glanced over his shoulder and saw the departure board. Flight 862 to London Heathrow was delayed. He hoped he wasn't about to make the biggest mistake of his career or prevent the biggest disaster. The private screening room was austere, featuring white walls, a metal table, and 4 chairs under unforgiving fluorescent lights. Titan remained alert by the door as TSA officer Marcus Wong carefully examined Captain Harrington's credentials. Everything was in order, Wong said, checking the pilot's license and ID against the database. Captain James Harrington, with 15 years of experience at American Airlines, was current on all certifications and clearances. Harrington sat rigidly, his arms crossed. "As I said, may I please proceed to my aircraft?" he asked. "The flight plan has already been filed, and we're burning fuel on the tarmac." Reeves watched quietly as Wong examined Harrington's flight bag. Standard items were found inside. Flight manuals, navigation charts, spare epaulets, reading glasses, an energy bar, and a travel-sized toiletry kit. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. "Sir, would you mind removing your jacket?" Wong inquired, his tone professional. Harrington complied with apparent annoyance, setting his uniform jacket on the table. This exceeded protocol even for a routine screening. Wong meticulously examined the jacket, inspecting each pocket and seam while Reeves observed Titan. The dog's focus remained constant. His gaze remained fixed on the pilot, tracking his every movement. After using her radio, Coleman checked with operations, then returned to the room, stating they're positioning a backup pilot just in case, but they need a decision within 15 minutes. Tension filled the small room. Reeves felt doubt begin to surface, even with his trust in Titan. The evidence, or the absence of it, was causing him to reevaluate his decision. "Look," Harrington said, his tone becoming more gentle. "I understand you're doing your job. Perhaps your dog detected the scent of my cat on my garments. I administered her medication this morning prior to departing." The reasoning seemed credible. Dogs sometimes react to animal odors, particularly medications containing chemical components resembling illicit substances. Wong finished his examination, discovering no irregularities. He confirmed that everything appeared correct. Coleman released a sigh of relief. "I believe we can exonerate Captain Harrington. We will document the event, and—" Titan abruptly barked loudly, standing up. Reeves knew from their time working together that this wasn't simple determination, it was a deliberate increase in intensity. The dog was signaling that they were overlooking something. "Sir," Reeves said cautiously, "could you please empty your trouser pockets as well?" Harrington's face registered a momentary shift. It was so subtle that most wouldn't have noticed it. "All right." He removed a wallet, keys, a phone, and some spare coins, setting them on the table. Wong scrutinized each item, paying close attention to the phone. Typical iPhone. "Is everything all right?" Harrington asked, gathering his things. As his sleeve moved, Reeves observed a slight dampness on the pilot's wrist, even though the room was cool. The man's breathing had also become a little faster. "Actually," Reeves said, "I'd like to request a full body scan and an ion detector swab." Harrington paused. "That's not a typical process for flight crew." "It is when there's reasonable suspicion," Coleman responded, her earlier skepticism diminishing as she also observed the pilot's changing behavior. "I need to make a call to my union representative," Harrington stated. Coleman nodded to Wong, who approached. Your phone will need to remain here during the additional screening, Captain. The atmosphere in the room had changed. What began as an apparent false alarm now felt like the beginning of something far more serious. While arrangements were being made to transfer Harrington to the advanced screening zone, Titan's actions changed once more. The dog moved towards the uniform jacket, which remained on the table, his attention becoming sharply focused. He's attempting to communicate something specific, Reeves observed, permitting Titan to approach the jacket. The dog carefully sniffed the garment, then stopped at the collar, gently but persistently pawing at the left lapel. Harrington expressed his discomfort. This is absurd. This was a standard uniform provided by the airline. Reeves recalled an incident from 6 months prior. A smuggler had concealed contraband within the clothing seams, bypassing typical security checks. Titan had discovered it at that time as well. I'd like to examine this more closely, Reeves stated, picking up the jacket. He gently ran his fingers along the collar and lapel, the areas Titan had pointed out. Despite the lack of any clear indication, he observed that the stitching on the left side seemed subtly different, almost too tight to readily see. We require the portable imaging equipment, he stated to Coleman, the type utilized for potential electronic compartments. You're dismantling my uniform because of a dog's reaction? Harrington exclaimed, his voice escalating. This is custom-tailored, valued at more than $1,000. Coleman paused briefly, then initiated the necessary communication. Should no evidence be located, the department will cover any damages, she guaranteed the pilot. While waiting for the equipment, Reeves thought about Titan's past. The Shepherd had previously identified a memory card concealed within a pen with a hollowed-out interior, which contained vital evidence in a human trafficking case. On another occasion, he'd flagged traces of explosives that were so slight that even the laboratory had initially overlooked them. I've worked with K-9 units for 12 years, Reeves told Coleman. Titan operates with exceptional accuracy. His detection rate is almost flawless. The imaging technician brought in a portable X-ray device, meticulously scanning the jacket as everyone observed the connected monitor. Initially, the scan revealed nothing out of the ordinary. However, when the scanner moved across the left lapel, an anomaly appeared. A slim, flat object was visible, concealed within the fabric and difficult to see without assistance. What is that? Coleman inquired, examining the screen. The technician made adjustments, improving the image. It appeared to be a microchip or a small electronic component. Everyone's attention shifted to Harrington, whose face had lost all color. Captain, Coleman stated, her voice now firm, can you please explain what's concealed within your uniform? Harrington's facade crumbled. I want a lawyer. Reeves crouched beside Titan, who had at last calmed down, his objective completed. Good boy, he murmured. You were correct all along. Michael Reeves's relationship with dogs hadn't always been as strong as it was with Titan. Growing up in South Chicago, he'd suffered a bite from a neighbor's Rottweiler when he was 8 years old, an experience that made him cautious around K-9s for several years. Although he'd largely overcome his concerns when he joined the Chicago Police Department at 23, he still never envisioned becoming a K-9 handler. A shift occurred during his 4th year as a police officer, after he observed K-9 officer Patrice Williams and her Belgian Malinois, Rex, successfully locate a kidnapping suspect through an industrial park, leading to the rescue of a 6-year-old child. The accuracy, the teamwork, and the unspoken connection between the handler and dog made a profound impression on him. 3 months afterward, Reeves submitted his application for the K-9 unit. His supervisor expressed surprise. Reeves had established a strong reputation in cybercrime investigation, not field operations. However, something about the connection between handler and dog resonated with him. You sure about this, Mike? His sergeant had inquired. K-9 work isn't merely a job, it's a lifestyle. That dog goes home with you, lives with you, depends on you. I'm sure, Reeves replied, with more conviction than he actually possessed. The Homeland Security K-9 training center in Texas assigned him to Titan, then a 2-year-old shepherd who had previously failed 2 training attempts, not due to a lack of ability, but because of what instructors described as excessive analytical behavior. Head trainer Martinez explained that most detection dogs alert immediately upon finding a target. Titan, however, pauses, verifies, then alerts. This makes him slower in certification tests, but could potentially lead to greater accuracy in complex environments. The initial weeks of their partnership presented difficulties. Reeves, who was still developing his handler skills, experienced frustration when Titan would hesitate during detection drills, appearing unfocused. A significant moment occurred during a training exercise when Titan bypassed the simulated explosive material and instead signaled an alert to an airport worker's bag, which was not part of the planned scenario. A subsequent security check revealed prescription medications the worker had inadvertently failed to declare. Concerns were raised about medications containing chemical compounds potentially usable in improvised explosives. Martinez acknowledged this, noting it was a thorough observation. Subsequently, Reeves modified his methods, allowing Titan the necessary time for comprehension. Their certification scores subsequently increased significantly, and upon assignment to O'Hare's International Terminal, they rapidly demonstrated their ability to identify anomalies that others overlooked. Their most impactful case occurred 8 months prior, when Titan flagged a diplomatic pouch for inspection, a request technically beyond their jurisdiction. Reeves, trusting his partner, had delayed the diplomatic courier, resulting in an international incident. This was ultimately resolved when a subsequent investigation uncovered counterfeit diplomatic credentials and smuggled biological samples. The case had resulted in commendations for them and a reputation for being willing to follow Titan's nose regardless of politics or pressure. Trust the dog had become Reeves' personal mantra. When in doubt, when under pressure, when facing skepticism from superiors, those 3 words centered him, and Titan had never let him down. Even now, as the investigation into Captain Harrington intensified, Reeves clung to that certainty amidst the growing tension around them. With methodical precision, the specialized TSA technical team worked, carefully cutting through the stitching of Captain Harrington's uniform lapel under the bright examination lights. Captain Harrington sat handcuffed to a chair in the corner, silent since requesting legal representation 15 minutes earlier. Careful, cautioned senior technician Sophia Lin as her colleague extracted a paper-thin electronic component from within the fabric. Don't damage it. A hush fell over the room as Lin secured the item within a designated evidence container. Roughly the size of a postage stamp but thinner than a credit card, the device displayed visible copper traces and a miniature power source. Initial assessment? Coleman inquired. Lin scrutinized it using a magnifying lens. It appears to be a custom electronic component, not commercially produced, possibly a triggering mechanism or a remote activation device. Reeves felt his pulse quicken. For what? That's what we need to find out, Lin said, connecting the container to a specialized scanner. However, whatever it is, your dog stopped it from boarding that aircraft. FBI Special Agent Victor Ramirez arrived in the room, having been summoned immediately after the device was found. Captain James Harrington, he stated, consulting a tablet. Or should I say James Harrington Kaiser. The pilot reacted quickly, his eyes widening. According to facial recognition data, you resemble an individual who ceased to be under Interpol surveillance in Frankfurt 3 years prior, Ramirez stated. Your associations with specific extremist organizations were noted. Harrington, also known as Kaiser, abruptly moved toward the door. Although restrained with handcuffs to the chair, his forceful attempt resulted in him and the chair being displaced several feet, at which point 2 officers subdued him. Amidst the conflict, he bit down forcefully on something within his mouth.
Suicide pile.
Ramirez exclaimed, "Get medical personnel in here immediately." The following moments were chaotic as medical staff hurried in, prying open the man's jaw and removing a capsule that was partially dissolved. He was swiftly secured to a gurney and transported to the airport's medical center. He will survive, the paramedic reassured them. We retrieved most of it in time, but he will be unconscious for some time. Once the disturbance subsided, Lin's assessment proceeded with increased intensity. She verified it was undoubtedly a bespoke activation trigger, indicating her screen, intended to connect with an external component, one absent from his possessions. Ramirez addressed Reeves. We must search the aircraft without delay. American Airlines Flight 862 had been completely occupied by the point the emergency evacuation order was issued. Passengers disembarked onto the snowy tarmac, their faces reflecting confusion and frustration as they were guided back to a secure area of the terminal. A specialized explosive detection team thoroughly swept the Boeing 777 from nose to tail, with a particular focus on the flight deck where Harrington would have been stationed. Titan worked alongside the bomb-sniffing dogs, his approach noticeably altered. He was methodical and precise, carefully examining each section before proceeding. While in the co-pilot's seat, Titan issued an alert from beneath the standard cushion. The technical team meticulously removed the cushion, uncovering what initially appeared to be a typical component of the seat's mechanical structure. However, closer inspection revealed otherwise. A second electronic device, significantly larger and more intricate, was hidden within the seat's adjustment mechanism. A bomb technician confirmed the presence of a remote-triggered explosive device following a scan. The device was sophisticated, featuring low metal content, which explains why it bypassed standard pre-flight checks. How severe? Reeves inquired softly. The technician's face showed deep concern. If it had landed here, it would have pierced the cockpit floor, potentially harming vital flight systems. A disaster in flight above the Atlantic. Ramirez's phone sounded. Following a short call, he addressed the team. The pilot is conscious and coherent. Captain James Harrington Kaiser was sitting upright in the hospital bed, his arms restrained to the side supports. His complexion was pale in the bright medical illumination. 2 FBI agents stood watch at the entryway as Ramirez, Coleman, and Reeves entered the room. Titan had been kept outside with another handler, a standard precaution for interrogations. The device has been located and rendered safe, Ramirez announced directly. We are aware of the explosive in the cockpit. What remains unknown is whether there are additional devices. Kaiser's eyes darted between them, assessing their reactions. The unsuccessful suicide attempt had left him physically vulnerable, but mentally sharp. I desire immunity. You are facing federal terrorism charges for attempting to destroy an aircraft, Ramirez stated flatly. Immunity is not being offered. Cooperation could potentially prevent a death sentence. A pause settled between them, then Coleman approached. 243 passengers, Captain, including the crew, children, families, people who entrusted you with their lives. Something in her words appeared to affect him. His shoulders visibly relaxed a little. It wasn't meant to turn out this way, he said at last. Initially, the operation involved only information-gathering intelligence work. Ramirez positioned a recorder on the bedside table. Let's begin from the start. The narrative that unfolded proved to be more intricate than anyone expected. Kaiser had, in fact, been a licensed pilot for 15 years prior to being recruited by a well-organized terrorist network during a layover in Istanbul. His first tasks were relatively straightforward. Adhering to security procedures, I documented vulnerability trends and, on occasion, moved encrypted data drives between overseas divisions. The organization identifies as Ascension, Kaiser informed me. They differ from typical groups. They operate with patience and precision. Certain actions are conceived years beforehand. And this operation? Reeves inquired. It's phase 1 of a 3-part sequence, Kaiser responded. Coordinated attacks targeting 3 transatlantic flights, highlighting security weaknesses despite measures implemented after September 11th. The initial flight served as the first test. Complete operational information revealed that Kaiser had received the custom-made explosives during a stopover in Dubai 3 weeks prior and had installed them during standard maintenance intervals, times when pilots frequently inspect their aircraft. The activation mechanisms integrated into his uniform would have engaged once the plane attained cruising altitude over the Atlantic. The other 2 pilots, are they in place? Ramirez inquired.
Kaiser nodded slowly.
Flights from Frankfurt to New York, Paris to Chicago were scheduled within the next 48 hours. Coleman was already on her phone, coordinating with international authorities. There's more, Kaiser continued, his voice dropping. The Chicago apartment, Unit 512 at Lakeside Towers, served as a network safe house. A team was dispatched immediately to the address. Within an hour, images began flooding into the secure tablets Ramirez carried. The apartment had been transformed into an advanced operations hub, containing blueprints of major airports, 3 protocol documents, and, most concerningly, detailed specifications for the explosive devices. This extended beyond 3 planes, Ramirez observed, as he reviewed the files. They were analyzing the entire international aviation security system. Kaiser affirmed this with a nod. Ascension is pursuing a long-term strategy. The plane attacks served as a demonstration of capability. The actual objective is the worldwide air transportation system, pinpointing vulnerabilities and exploiting them in a methodical way. Ramirez insisted on names. He wanted the names of all individuals involved. Kaiser provided the information he possessed, clarifying that the network functioned in separate units with restricted shared knowledge. His main contact was referred to only as the coordinator, a woman he had encountered on 2 occasions, both times at busy international terminals where observation was difficult. Kaiser cautioned that she would be watching news reports. He stated that when my flight doesn't arrive as scheduled, she's going to realize something is amiss. Contingency plans will then be initiated. I inquired about these plans, and he responded that he didn't know the specifics, but there is a secondary operations center located somewhere near the airport. Reeves considered Titan's remarkable detection capabilities, the device integrated into my uniform. I asked what could have made it detectable to my dog. Kaiser appeared truly puzzled, saying it shouldn't have been. The components had been deliberately engineered to prevent chemical detection. Still, Reeves insisted. He focused on you right away. The ex-pilot denied it. Then your dog is either incredibly fortunate or remarkably skilled, as these devices underwent trials involving K-9 teams in 3 countries. As they departed the hospital room, Ramirez addressed Reeves. We must locate that secondary operations center quickly. I know someone who can help, Reeves replied, looking towards the exit where Titan waited, his posture watchful even though considerable time had elapsed since their morning patrol had evolved into something far more important. Snow fell in heavy flakes as the tactical team gathered in the airport maintenance area, their breath appearing as vapor in the frigid air. Reeves checked Titan's protective vest once more before fastening the specialized booties intended to shield the dog's paws from sharp objects and chemical hazards. The maintenance facility comprises 5 distinct buildings, FBI Tactical Commander Wilson clarified, indicating the blueprint shown on a tablet. Considering Kaiser's restricted intelligence and cell phone triangulation data from his known contacts, we suspect Building C is our most probable target. Ramirez acknowledged. The coordinator, our suspect, probably isn't aware that we've detected the operation, but she will likely become suspicious when Kaiser's flight arrived without any issues, Coleman added. Reeves knelt beside Titan. Ready, boy? He whispered. The shepherd's alert stance provided the response he needed. The approach was silent and coordinated. 3 teams prepared to enter concurrently from separate access points, with Reeves and Titan accompanying the primary entry team. As they approached Building C, an unremarkable building containing electrical systems for runway lighting, Titan's actions validated their assessment. The shepherd's demeanor shifted, his movements becoming more measured, his nose working intensely. He's detected something, Reeves murmured into his radio. The tactical team then established positions around the primary entrance. With a 3-count signal, they forced the door, moving quickly into the poorly lit interior. The front office seemed ordinary. Maintenance logs, shift schedules, and equipment manuals were neatly arranged on metal shelving units. However, Titan wasn't focused on the office. He pulled Reeves towards a door labeled electrical access only, his sense of urgency clear. Beyond the door, a staircase descended to a sublevel that wasn't included in the airport's official blueprints. The team proceeded cautiously, tactical lights showing the restricted passage. At the lower level, they discovered what seemed like a typical maintenance room, with the exception of the woman positioned near a laptop computer, her hand positioned above the keyboard. FBI. Hands where we can see them, Ramirez announced. Rather than obeying, the woman activated a key and reached for something inside her jacket. The tactical team reacted instantly, 2 officers restraining her while others secured the room. Titan emitted a sharp bark, drawing Reeves towards a storage cabinet situated along the far wall. Check it, Wilson instructed. Within the cabinet, They found their worst suspicions confirmed additional specialized explosive devices, numbering at least 20 units, each resembling those found on the aircraft, although with differing mounting configurations. "She's initiating a data wipe," the technical specialist reported, as he examined the computer. "But we caught it in time." The woman, later identified as Elena Vostov, a known associate of several extremist groups, remained silent as she was handcuffed and led away. However, the evidence was compelling. The room held everything necessary for a coordinated attack on multiple aircraft, including devices in various stages of assembly, airline schedules, security rotation patterns, and most disturbingly, personnel files on dozens of potential flight crew recruits like Kaiser. Ramirez understood this extended far beyond just the current flights, reviewing the data. This was a long-term operation, years in the making. As the FBI evidence team documented the scene, Reeves took Titan to each corner of the room, ensuring nothing was overlooked. In the final area, behind a ventilation panel, the Shepherd alerted once more. Inside was a small hard drive carefully hidden. Wilson noted this as they secured the drive, seeing it as one final insurance policy. Emergency vehicles surrounded the maintenance area, their lights illuminating the falling snow with alternating red and blue patterns. A sense of the scale of what they had averted began to settle as word spread through the command center. It began with one pilot, Coleman said, observing as the last of the evidence was loaded for transport. "If your dog hadn't stopped him," Reeves nodded, scratching Titan behind the ears. "One flight becomes 3. A series of 3 successful attacks provided a template for many more. The Shepherd looked up at him, snow gathering on his dark fur, the mission completed. 2 days later, Reeves was in the airport's administrative conference room as Airport Director Margaret Chun spoke to the team. Titan sat attentively beside him, recently groomed and wearing his formal canine and unit harness. According to Chen, her voice filled with gravity, a potentially devastating terrorist plot was stopped thanks to the outstanding efforts of Officer Reeves and his canine partner Titan, in conjunction with TSA, FBI, and airport security. International authorities have verified the successful apprehension of 2 additional pilots in Frankfurt and Paris, averting what would have been coordinated attacks. Ramirez then advanced, acknowledging Reeves with a nod. Findings from the Secondary Operations Center have resulted in the identification of 17 Ascension Network operatives in 8 countries. Apprehensions are in progress. Reeves listened, one hand resting lightly on Titan's head. For the Shepherd, it had been a routine day of performing his duties, utilizing his exceptional senses to safeguard the humans nearby. He hadn't grasped the importance of the pilot he'd stopped, or the lives he'd preserved. He had a sense that something was amiss and wouldn't yield until someone paid attention. "Officer Reeves," Chun stated, "the Department of Homeland Security has asked that you and Titan provide training consultations for their aviation security division. Your approaches, especially your reliance on your partner's intuition, even when standard procedures indicated something different, embody the kind of flexible security thinking that is necessary." Following the meeting's conclusion and the exchange of congratulations, Reeves knelt beside his partner. "Good boy, Titan," he whispered, briefly pressing his forehead against the Shepherd's. "The best boy." Titan's tail wagged once, his dark eyes meeting Reeves with what almost seemed like understanding. Then his ears perked up, his attention already shifting to the next task, the next patrol, the next threat that only he might detect. They walked back together toward Terminal 3, prepared to resume their observation of the thousands of travelers who would never realize how narrowly they avoided disaster, nor that their safety had been ensured by an officer and a dog who prevented a pilot from boarding his plane. Have you ever seen a working dog like Titan perform duties at an airport or public place? We welcome your stories in the comments below. Do you believe in your pet's intuition regarding people, even if the reasoning isn't clear? Many handlers report that their canine partners often detect things humans overlook. What's the most remarkable animal story you've encountered about an animal averting a disaster or rescuing lives? Please share your experiences. We review all comments and may include your story in a future video. What other canine heroes would you like us to highlight in upcoming videos? Tell us what topics you're most interested in. If the story of Titan's incredible save at O'Hare International Airport impressed you, Please share this video with friends and family who appreciate the amazing capabilities of working dogs. Together, we can spread awareness about these four-legged heroes who serve alongside their human partners. Rewatch our previous canine stories displayed now, including the amazing story of Rex, who tracked a kidnapper through a blizzard, and Luna, who discovered a hidden human trafficking operation at a border checkpoint. Remember, sometimes the greatest heroes walk on four legs. See you in the next video. A military dog halted at the entrance to the helicopter, declining to board even with direct orders and the presence of nearby enemy forces. His handler was confronted with a difficult decision: leave his faithful companion or disregard instructions and jeopardize the safety of everyone. However, when they eventually determined what the dog had sensed within the aircraft, it sent a wave of apprehension through the group. If they had departed according to schedule, none of them would have survived. Curious to learn the reason? Please subscribe and leave a comment indicating your location. Now let's begin. The night air hung thick with tension as Staff Sergeant Mike Connors pressed his back against the stone wall of the compound, night vision goggles revealing the green-hued landscape of the remote village. Beside him, Sergeant Taylor checked his weapon, a nervous habit that had become familiar during their months of deployments together. "Tell me again why we're doing this discreetly?" Taylor murmured, observing the shadows. "Because officially we shouldn't be 10 kilometers within this area," Mike responded. He was focused on both their discussion and the compound's interior, where they'd been documenting weapons caches for the past hour. Headquarters requires plausible deniability should complications arise. Rex, Mike's Belgian Malinois partner, was positioned between them, remaining watchful even after having traversed 12 miles of challenging ground from their insertion point. The dog's ears reacted to every noise, his strong frame holding restrained power. "Time to move," Mike stated, glancing at his watch. "We've obtained what we were looking for." They quietly advanced through the darkness towards the eastern wall, employing their well-rehearsed stealth. Their extraction helicopter would not be ready for another 2 hours, at a landing zone 5 miles from their position. That's when everything went wrong. The spotlight caught them halfway across the open space, followed by shouted commands in a language neither of them spoke. Rex's low growl served as the only warning before gunfire erupted from the guard tower. "Go!" Mike shouted, returning fire as Taylor sprinted for cover. The following moments descended into chaos, muzzle flashes briefly lighting the darkness, the distinct sound of AK-47 fire, and the heavy sound of boots as guards reacted to the alarm. They moved towards the perimeter, Rex staying near Mike's side, sometimes quickly moving forward to create space between the pursuers and the retreating Americans. Taylor was injured just as they reached the outer wall, a bullet passing through his right thigh. "I'm hit," he gasped, falling against the ground, blood already soaking through his tactical pants. Mike pulled him behind rocks as more bullets flew overhead. Their location was exposed, their initial exfil plan ruined, and the closest Allied forces were over 30 miles away. "Command, this is Bravo 6, Mike spoke into his comms. "Mission compromised, 1 wounded and under fire. Request immediate extraction at secondary LZ. The crackling response confirmed his concerns. "Negative, Bravo 6. The closest available unit is 40 minutes away. Can you avoid detection and move to the rally point?" Mike observed Taylor's pale expression, then glanced at Rex, who remained vigilant at the edge of the area, attentive and alert, perceiving a threat the humans did not. "Roger that," Mike responded. "Heading to the rally point. We require medical assistance." He addressed Rex, giving the quiet instruction that would decide their survival. "Locate an escape route, boy." Rex proceeded purposefully, guiding them away from the compound, through a ravine not shown on their tactical maps. The dog stopped intermittently, ears swiveling to pick up sounds beyond human perception, before selecting routes that kept them hidden from the search parties scouring the hills. "Your dog is remarkable," Taylor said, struggling through gritted teeth, as Mike partially carried him across a rocky streambed. The improvised tourniquet had lessened the bleeding, but Taylor's complexion grew paler with each minute. How could he know where to go? Rex was chosen for missions such as this, Mike explained, thankful for the dialogue that helped keep Taylor conscious. Belgian Malinois possess remarkable situational awareness. He is analyzing terrain, registering sensory input, listening for dangers, processing all of it faster than any technology we have. They stopped as Mike examined Taylor's wound. The projectile had exited cleanly, yet the hemorrhage was substantial. Taylor would be unable to traverse any significant distance without support. "Command, this is Bravo 6, Mike transmitted via comms. Hostile forces remained in pursuit. Sergeant Taylor's state was worsening. Request for extraction prioritization was initiated." The radio emitted static. "Bravo 6, this is command. A friendly helicopter was rerouted to your location. Estimated time of arrival, 25 minutes at coordinates Delta 3. Mike consulted his navigation device. Delta 3 remained 3 kilometers distant, a manageable distance ordinarily, but with Taylor's injury and enemy patrols active in the vicinity, reaching it would be precarious. "We will arrive," he told Taylor, although uncertainty likely reflected in his gaze. "Simply abandon me," Taylor said feebly. "I am only an impediment." "That is not occurring," Mike stated resolutely. "We all return or no one does." Rex abruptly stiffened, fur bristling as he focused on the darkness behind them. Mike swiftly extinguished their tactical light, drawing Taylor further into the darkness. Moments later, a search group passed within 30 meters of where they were, the enemy soldiers illuminating the area with flashlights. Continuing onward, the sound of rotor blades reached them distantly. Rex increased his speed, indicating they were approaching their target. The dog led them through a final stretch of dense brush before the terrain opened, revealing a small clearing nestled between hills, their designated landing zone. "We made it," Mike said, assisting Taylor, whose body was becoming increasingly weak. "Just a little further." The clearing was scarcely large enough to accommodate a helicopter. Mike helped Taylor to lie down behind some boulders, examining his wound again. The bleeding had lessened, but Taylor's skin felt cold and clammy, and his eyes were having difficulty focusing. "Stay with me, man," Mike encouraged. "The helicopter is nearly here." Rex moved to the edge of their cover, his posture tense as he surveyed the surroundings. In the distance, the characteristic sound of helicopter rotors became increasingly noticeable. "Command, this is Bravo 6 at extraction point," Mike reported. "Be advised, enemy forces remain in the area. Approach with caution." "Roger, Bravo 6. Blackhawk is 2 minutes out. Pop smoke when you have visual." The helicopter emerged as a dark shape against the night sky. The lights dimmed as they initiated a tactical maneuver. Mike deployed a smoke canister, and the Blackhawk descended swiftly, dust kicked up by the rotor blades. The side door opened, and Captain Riley, the pilot, made an urgent hand gesture for them to enter. "Move it," Riley yelled above the engine's roar. "I'm detecting multiple heat signatures approaching from the south." Mike helped Taylor to his feet, partially pulling him towards the helicopter. Rex moved in front of them, his ears perked and attentive to any danger. Riley called out, her expression tense, "Get in now. We've got company coming." 20 yards from the helicopter, Taylor's legs gave out. Mike adjusted his grip, now practically carrying his teammate, as they closed the final distance to safety. Just as they reached the boarding ramp, Rex abruptly stopped. The change in the dog's demeanor was dramatic. His body stiffened, ears flat against his head, eyes fixed on the helicopter. As Mike issued the order to board, Rex retreated, letting out a quiet growl Mike hadn't experienced except during training. "Rex, come," Mike instructed. The dog, however, remained in place, obstructing access to the helicopter. "What's the delay?" Riley called out, her gaze shifting between her instruments and the landscape. "We need to be airborne immediately." Taylor leaned against Mike, appearing to be barely aware of his surroundings. "What's the issue with the dog?" Mike looked at Rex, puzzled. Over 3 years of operations, encompassing numerous helicopter insertions and extractions, Rex had consistently followed commands. The dog's training was flawless, his obedience complete until now. "Something's wrong," Mike muttered. "He wouldn't act like this without a reason." "We don't have time for this," Riley called out. "Enemy forces are less than a click away and closing." Mike observed Rex's rigid posture, then looked to the helicopter, and finally to Taylor's pale face. Each second they remained exposed, their danger grew. However, Rex's actions triggered a warning he couldn't dismiss. The dog wasn't simply refusing to enter. He was actively blocking their approach to the aircraft. Rex, heel, Mike commanded again, his tone more insistent. The dog remained steadfast, his eyes fixed on the helicopter, his body rigid with what Mike identified as an alert posture, not fear. What the hell is going on? Riley shouted above the rotor noise. Less than 2 minutes remained before potential compromise. Mike's thoughts accelerated. Rex, trained to identify explosives, weapons, and other dangers, was hesitant to approach the helicopter. Mike reported a possible threat to the aircraft and instructed Taylor to descend. Rex is detecting something, he said. Riley's face changed from impatience to worry. My pre-flight checks were clean. There's nothing wrong with this bird, I stated. The radio on Mike's tactical vest emitted static. Bravo 6, this is command. Satellite indicates multiple hostiles are moving towards your location. Evacuate immediately. Repeat, evacuate immediately. Taylor's head rested against Mike's shoulder, his voice a whisper. The dog is agitated. Abandon him. That's not happening, Mike responded resolutely. The Malinois wasn't demonstrating general fear. It was exhibiting a specific alert response, the type it had been trained to show when detecting a threat. Command is ordering immediate extraction, Riley announced. Fuel is being consumed while we wait. A decision is needed, Sergeant. Mike was familiar with the established procedures. The mission held the highest priority. Taylor's life was critically important. The predefined procedure for operations under duress was unambiguous. The extraction must be completed at any cost. However, Rex had never been incorrect. I require 1 minute, Mike said to Riley. We cannot afford a minute, Riley responded. Enemy combatants are closing in from the south and west. If we do not launch immediately, we will all be eliminated or taken prisoner. The radio emitted a burst of static, followed by the voice of Colonel Westmore, the operation commander. Staff Sergeant Connors, this is a direct order. Board that helicopter immediately. Mike paused, wrestling with his sense of obligation and the intuition that had protected him during 3 deployments. Sir, my canine is signaling a possible danger to the aircraft. I request authorization to examine the area before boarding. Colonel Westmore responded, Negative, Sergeant. An unmanned enemy drone is approaching your location in under 2 minutes. You are out of time. Abandon the dog if needed. Leave that stupid fucking dog and get on the chopper. That's an order, Connors. Westmore's voice crackled through the static. Something broke inside Mike at those words. 3 years together, dozens of missions, countless lives saved, including his own. Rex wasn't equipment, he was his partner. He's not just a dog, Mike replied, his voice firm, and he's indicating a problem with the aircraft. Are you jeopardizing this entire operation because of an animal? Westmore's voice boomed over the radio. That helicopter is the only resource available in the area. Miss this extraction and there won't be a second chance. Taylor's breathing had become shallow. His skin was turning a gray color that Mike had seen countless times from battlefield injuries. Immediate medical assistance was crucial. Without it, he wouldn't survive. Riley had deactivated the main rotors to preserve fuel. The helicopter remained motionless in the clearing while she observed her instruments. Command wants us to abort, she relayed to Mike. Orders are to take off in 30 seconds, with or without you. Mike remained steadfast, Rex still positioned between them and the helicopter, his focus unbroken. Years of battlefield experience had instilled in Mike a single, vital understanding. In critical situations, instinct takes precedence over instructions. If you proceed without us, the mission is compromised, Mike relayed to Riley. Taylor possesses the crucial intelligence. Should he be captured or killed, all that we've endangered our lives for will be lost. Riley's face displayed a transition from frustration to doubt. Command is threatening to permanently restrict my operations if I disregard instructions. My professional standing is at stake. So is mine, Mike responded. Rex is the top detection dog in the regiment. If he indicates a problem with that helicopter, there is a problem. The radio emitted static again, Westmore's voice now laced with anger. Captain Riley, you are instructed to take off immediately. Abandon Connors and the wounded if they are unwilling to board. That is a direct order. Following a moment of suspense, Riley removed her headset and exited the helicopter. Colonel Westmore, she said, speaking directly into the radio, this is Captain Riley. I will look into the K-9's alert and will report back. Without waiting for a reply, she turned off the radio, cutting off Westmore's objection. You've just signed your own discharge papers, Mike said softly. Riley shrugged, perhaps, but I've observed these dogs operate previously. If yours is this certain, it would be unwise not to verify. Riley tossed her flight helmet into the cockpit and moved forward cautiously, pausing a short distance from where Rex kept his alert position. What is he trained to detect? She asked. Explosives, weapons, chemical agents, Mike replied. But he's also cross-trained for mechanical anomalies. Dogs can detect subtle changes in machinery that instruments miss. Riley's professional skepticism conflicted with her pilot's instinct for caution. I performed a complete pre-flight check before takeoff. All systems were nominal. Mike nodded toward Rex. He disagrees. A moan from Taylor brought their attention back to her. The wounded soldier's condition was worsening rapidly, his face now ashen. We need to get him treatment sooner, he won't make it, Mike stated urgently. Riley looked back at the helicopter, then surveyed the surrounding terrain where enemy forces were approaching. I'm giving this 5 minutes, she decided. If we don't find anything by then, we fly. Dog or no dog. Deal, Mike agreed quickly. Rex, find it. The command freed the Malinois from his blocking position. Rather than entering the helicopter, Rex commenced a careful sweep around the aircraft, his nose working with focus as he detected something undetectable to the humans. Rex's concentration grew stronger on the port side close to the engine housing. His posture altered slightly, ears pointing forward, tail rigid, movements more precise. He's nearing something, he communicated to Riley. This is the way he acts when he's pinpointing a target. Riley observed with increasing worry as Rex stopped under the main rotor assembly, his nose directed upward towards the engine housing. The dog glanced back at Mike, then looked again at the engine, his stance now stiff with alertness. He's found something, Mike confirmed. It's inside the engine compartment. Riley paused briefly before deciding. I need to check it, she stated, climbing onto the helicopter skid to reach the maintenance panel. Should a mechanical problem be significant enough for your dog to identify, I require notification prior to takeoff. As she reached for the access panel, a distant crack resonated across the clearing, a rifle shot from the advancing enemy forces. They've located us, Mike warned, drawing his sidearm. We're out of time. Riley's expression became resolute as she operated the latches on the access panel. Then let's hope your dog is correct and we can repair whatever he's found in the next 3 minutes. The maintenance panel creaked open, exposing the intricate network of fuel lines and hydraulic controls. Riley directed her tactical flashlight into the space, carefully examining the parts. Report, Riley, Mike called out to her. What's your assessment? Riley's features shifted as her light caught something at the back of the compartment. I'm seeing a hairline fracture in the main fuel feed line, she stated, her voice strained. Fuel was leaking onto the hot section housing. How bad, Mike asked. Riley moved to get a better view with her light. The crack was severe enough that flight vibrations would have widened it within minutes once cruising altitude was reached. She didn't complete the sentence, but her concerned expression conveyed the gravity of the situation. Catastrophic failure, Mike asked directly. Riley confirmed. Mid-air fuel line rupture feeding directly onto superheated engine components. Best case, emergency landing in hostile territory. The most severe possibility is fire and explosion, Mike determined. This appears to be damage caused by temperature changes, she stated. The sandstorms allow fine particles to spread everywhere, particularly affecting engine parts. A gunshot sounded nearer now, followed by shouts echoing in the distance. Can you repair it? Mike asked urgently. Riley hesitated, biting her lip. Perhaps. I possess a field repair kit, but it's intended for hydraulic lines, not fuel feeds. It might last long enough to get us back to base, but I can't guarantee it. The dog's ears suddenly perked up, his focus directed towards the ridge line where shadows moved against the night sky. "They're getting closer," Mike warned. "Whatever you're going to do it quickly." Riley went to the cockpit, returning with a compact repair kit. "I need 5 minutes," she said, climbing back up to the engine compartment. "Maybe less if your dog's observation saves us from having to troubleshoot." Mike gently scratched Rex behind the ears. "Good boy," he murmured, "the best boy." Riley worked with practiced efficiency, her fingers moving deftly despite the awkward angle and poor lighting. The specialized epoxy compound she applied needed to create a temporary seal strong enough to withstand the pressure of flight. "This repair won't pass any inspection," she muttered, wrapping a reinforcing mesh around the crack. "But it might get us home." Mike stood at the perimeter, rifle ready as he surveyed the advancing hillside. The enemy fighters were moving steadily closer, utilizing the terrain for cover. "How much longer?" he inquired of Riley. "Almost there," she responded, not looking up from her task. "The compound needs another 60 seconds to set properly before I can pressurize the system." Rex abruptly froze, his focus fixed on the eastern approach to the clearing. A low growl resonated in his chest. Mike quickly noticed the alteration in behavior. "They're closer than we thought," he murmured to Riley. "Rex has them." The dog's ears were pressed against his head, his body tense. Mike lifted his rifle, peering through the tactical scope to survey the area Rex was fixated on. There, a brief movement against the rocks. 2 individuals, potentially 3, were moving in a flanking maneuver as the primary force advanced from the west. "Riley," Mike called quietly, his voice filled with urgency. "Enemy contacts are approaching from behind, less than 100 meters and closing rapidly. We must depart immediately." Riley completed the last application of sealant, her actions swift but accurate. She stated, 30 more seconds are needed for the minimum curing time, as she already began closing the access panel. A shorter time would risk the patch failing during takeoff. "Rex," Mike instructed quietly, "protect Taylor." The Malinois instantly moved to position himself guardedly next to the unconscious soldier. Mike established a defensive posture, rifle firmly against his shoulder. The initial muzzle flash appeared on the eastern ridge. A rifle shot followed, accompanied by the sound of a bullet passing above. Mike fired in measured bursts, prioritizing suppression over attempts to hit targets obscured by distance. Under fire, he called out as additional shots echoed from several locations. 10 seconds, Riley responded, noting the helicopter's rotors initiating their startup sequence. Rex emitted a sharp bark, signaling movement from another direction. Mike turned, observing 3 more fighters advancing from the southern edge of the clearing. He discharged another burst, causing them to retreat for cover. "We need to load Taylor now," Riley called over the intensifying rotor noise. "The patch will either hold or it won't, but we're running out of time." Mike secured his rifle and hurried to Taylor's side, lifting the injured soldier in a fireman's carry. The volume of enemy fire increased as he advanced towards the helicopter, bullets impacting the earth close by and ricocheting from the aircraft's armored underside. The key uncertainty lingered. Would Rex now enter the helicopter of his own accord, given the mechanical problem was resolved? Mike paused at the boarding ramp, glancing toward his canine partner. "Rex, come a bordo." The instant lingered as Rex stood at the ramp's edge. His focus remained on the engine compartment, the location of the repair. Without hesitation, the dog jumped into the cabin, indicating his approval of Riley's work. "He's good with it," Mike shouted to Riley as he secured Taylor on the cabin floor. "Let's go." The helicopter lifted shakily, its engine straining as Riley performed an emergency takeoff procedure. Mike took position at the open door, rifle ready as enemy fire continued to strike the aircraft's underside. A violent shudder ran through the aircraft as something struck the tail section. Alert signals illuminated Riley's instrument panel, yet she kept the aircraft steady, sharply turning eastward to create space from the attacking fighters. She relayed that the tail rotor had sustained damage, her hands swiftly adjusting the controls, managing to keep the helicopter operational, albeit precariously. A rapid detonation occurred on the hillside, an RPG having narrowly missed them. The blast's impact jolted the helicopter, causing a brief spin that Riley struggled to correct. They possess substantial weaponry. We skate, Mike exclaimed, observing yet another combatant identified by the recognizable barrel of a rocket launcher. Another RPG whizzed past them, narrowly avoiding the primary rotor by a few inches before exploding in the night sky beyond. The helicopter vibrated once more, alarms sounding in the cockpit as systems neared their operational boundaries. As Mike reached for the radio, a frightening new sound pierced the helicopter's noise. A high-pitched whine emanated from the engine compartment, followed by a metallic snap that echoed through the airframe. Riley's eyes widened in alarm as warning indicators illuminated her panel. Fuel pressure was decreasing, the patch was failing. Riley swiftly manipulated the controls, making quick adjustments to preserve altitude. She rerouted fuel flow, deactivated non-essential systems, and reported we might reach Outpost Delta if the secondary lines remain functional. Rex proceeded to the cockpit entrance, his focus returning to the engine compartment. However, unlike his earlier vigilant stance, the dog now simply observed, his ears pricked forward, seemingly assessing the circumstances. "I think your dog is performing systems checks," Riley remarked with a tense laugh. "He keeps looking directly at the location of that fuel line." Another mechanical groan arose from the engine, accompanied by a brief increase in power. The aircraft stabilized, establishing a rhythm despite the damage and strained repairs. "I believe the epoxy is resealing as it warms," Riley stated, a cautious hope evident in her voice as she examined the instruments. "Pressure is stabilizing. It's not ideal, but potentially sufficient to get us home." Mike engaged the communication system. "Command, this is Bravo 6. We are airborne with one critically wounded. Helicopter sustained damage during extraction. We are requesting an emergency medical team at Outpost Delta, ETA 20 minutes. Static filled the airwaves as Colonel Westmore's voice cut through. His previous frustration vanished, replaced by a calm, professional demeanor. "Copy that, Bravo 6 medical team standing by. What's your aircraft status?" Captain Riley grasped the handset. "This is Captain Riley, aircraft operational but damaged. Tail rotor compromised, fuel system patched. We'll make it to Delta, but this bird won't fly again without major repairs." Westmore responded. "Understood. Priority is getting our people home safe." "Well done, Captain. Excellent work, Staff Sergeant." The lights of Outpost Delta became visible on the horizon. This was a comforting sight following the difficult flight. Riley had kept the helicopter at a reduced altitude, carefully managing the damaged systems and maximizing the aircraft's capabilities. She announced, with noticeable relief, 5 minutes remaining, noting that a medical team should be ready. To Mike's surprise, Taylor's eyes opened briefly. The dog, he whispered, his voice barely audible over the engine noise, was right. "Yes, he was," Mike agreed, signaling Rex to come closer. The Malinois approached carefully, seeming to understand the fragility of the wounded soldier. "He saved all of us." The helicopter descended toward the brightly lit landing pad, its movement sluggish, but controlled under Riley's expert handling. Upon landing, medical staff quickly moved forward with a stretcher, and ground crew positioned fire suppression equipment around the aircraft. Taylor was transferred to the medical team, with Mike providing a quick summary of his condition as preparations began to move him to the field hospital. As Taylor was transported, Riley exited the cockpit, her flight suit marked with hydraulic fluid and sweat. With exhaustion visible in her movements, but satisfaction in her eyes, she addressed Mike and Rex. "Your dog," she said, shaking her head in amazement, "just saved 3 lives in a $12 million aircraft." If that fuel line had ruptured at altitude, she trailed off, leaving the implications clear to both of them. Colonel Westmore then approached from the command center, his expression unreadable as he stopped before them. A brief, tense silence fell as Mike prepared for the expected rebuke. Unexpectedly, Westmore offered his hand. "That was some of the finest judgment I've seen in 20 years of command, Sergeant Connors," he said, astonishing both Mike and Riley. Prioritizing his canine partner over direct orders demonstrated courage. He then knelt before Rex, who displayed impeccable military bearing, even after the challenges of the extended mission. Regarding this soldier, Westmore stated, with evident respect in his voice, I believe there's a stake in the officer's mess bearing his name. Following Westmore's departure, Riley addressed Mike. I've been flying for 12 years, she said softly, and never once questioned my pre-flight checks or the maintenance team's work. If your dog hadn't stopped us, she shook her head, unable to finish the thought. That's why we trust them, Mike responded briefly. Despite potential failures in technology, established procedures, and even directives, they still observe what remains unseen. Rex rested against Mike's leg, exhibiting signs of tiredness now that the immediate threat had subsided. Considering that this dog had traversed miles of challenging terrain, identified a crucial mechanical fault, and rescued 3 lives during a single night, it appeared to be a deserved display of weariness. Come on, boy, he said softly. Let's go check on Taylor, and then I believe someone promised you chicken. Have you ever observed an animal perceiving danger that humans missed? The remarkable capabilities of certain animals, particularly trained military and police dogs, frequently determine the difference between life and death in crucial situations. Would you rely on your animal's instincts even if it required disregarding direct orders? Staff Sergeant Connors confronted this challenging decision, and his belief and his partner protected everyone on that mission. Share your opinions in the comments below. If this incredible story of canine heroism impressed you, please like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing tales. Click the bell icon to turn on notifications so you never miss another story. Share this video with friends who appreciate the extraordinary bond between handlers and their canine partners. Check out our previous canine stories appearing on your screen now. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, with a brand new video.